interesting topic, and I firmly believe that collaboration has exponential impact. And I think it's one of the areas it's like not vastly understood. Only the ones who go through it really feel the pain of it. The others feel it when they go through it, I guess. So I want to start the first conversation with the old traditional way of how organizations used to function is primarily around focus on productivity or focus on new revenue avenues or cost optimization, and that's where collaboration used to come in. But today, I think there's a huge need for collaboration that goes beyond this to really create an impact which is societal, which is economic growth, which is upskilling, and a whole lot of innovation. So Manoj, I want to start with you. Having been in this space for such a long time, and both from an academia industry as well as working with the government, can you paint a picture of what an impact could be when you have this collaboration between these entities so well oiled?
Thank you. Firstly, let me begin by saying that in my 2 decades in industry, I had more than 10 different formal academic collaboration projects with different IITs or ISC. In my last 2 years working in academic, I had equally a large number of collaborations formally with industry. And therefore, I can talk from 2 decades at least what has been changing. First thing, in the beginning of 2000s, whenever industry and academia, it's not that there was no desire. Whenever industry and academia wanted to work together, I think it was more a transactional approach in the sense that institutes looked at how they can get additional revenues. The intention was never that they will work on the problems that will eventually solve the problems of the industry, and those solutions will be deployed in the industry. Therefore, the outcomes were not clearly defined. As far as academia was considered, they would have gotten funding from industry under some joint projects. They will do research, will publish, but those outcomes, those results will never, possibly rarely, I do not remember any instance that any work done in any IIT, I'm talking of till 2010, maybe up to 15, was ever taken by industry for its commercial usage. Therefore, because the model was giver taker model, industry gives money, academia takes money. Industry gives a problem, academia looks at the problem and so on. One fundamental change that has been happening in the last 5-6 years, I can talk, is that today the model, or a successful model, if we were to evolve that, has to become more like a co-creator, co-development model. And government is significantly enforcing this. I'll just give 1 or 2 examples. I know we will come back. Many of the funding schemes these days, if you look at the government, I will take 1 or 2 examples. For example, I'm a co-chair of one of the telecom-related scheme that where government gives funding to startups, academia, and MSME sector. Telecom Technology Development Fund is the name of the scheme, or another scheme that is also there, that also I'm doing, Digital Communication University. So what government is trying to do? Government is trying to practically force, it cannot literally force, practically force that if there are individual proposals coming from academia, whose outcome cannot be used anywhere, they will not be funded under those schemes. I'm talking about big schemes of 500 crore and more. That means academia has been forced to make joint collaboration efforts along with industry, so they have to define, they will develop this algorithm, XYZ industry partner will utilize it, XYZ will put as a system, then as a solution, and ultimately some value can be delivered. I think that change is beginning to happen in India. I think there is a welcome change. Why welcome change is, even from academia point of view, we all know, if somebody asks us to develop any algorithm, we can develop any algorithm. Right? The question is, when you put that algorithm in a realistic situation, when you have the constraints of memory, compute power, what not realize whether that will work or not work. Academia never used to consider that, and that is why that research was purely in libraries. I would like to stop in this first round here by saying that there is a model shift that is happening and must have happen in the nature of the industry academia relation from a giver taker approach to a co-creator to co-developer.
Thank you so much. I think I want to leave that conversation to you, Tassi. He spoke about the shift in the mindset, the shift in the policies, the shift in how the collaboration is happening. You've been in the heart of this, looking at this shift, working with the core members of it. How is it changing? What kind of impact have you been seeing?
So thank you, Choudhary, and hello everyone. And thanks actually to be here in the room, at least. But just to share with you, so I come from biotech sector, from an organization called CCAM, Center for Cellular Molecular Platforms. It's largely a biotech technology and innovation organization based out of North Bangalore in a larger campus, what we call as the Bangalore Life Science Cluster. And I think there is a tremendous, if you look back, at the over years, collaboration is a phenomenal catalyst which actually makes things possible which seemingly are impossible to begin with. I'll give you two quick backgrounds, considering that we are against time. We'll give you two quick case studies, or one if I don't get to the other one. One of the work that we did at CCAM, but largely across India, was during the COVID times. COVID times showed us, when our backs were to the wall, how it was important for all of us to work together. Taking away the curtains that we have put it for many years, knowingly or unknowingly. And when you actually do that, how real magic happens, the impossible that looks impossible happens. I'll give an example. So COVID times started and we were about to get into the lockdown and all that. This is last week of March 2020 we are talking about. We started suddenly realizing, we were hoping in January and February that India will not have an impact. Italy was going through a rough patch, China was already there. We were hoping because of many reasons. One of the reasons because we all have taken BCG vaccine, we will not have it. No, I was also hoping, right? You never knew that what actually would impact. Come March, we realized that we are now getting to lockdown. One of the largest reason we went to a lockdown because we were not prepared. As a country, we were not prepared to take the mammoth challenge that the COVID-19 could bring. So, idea was to just buy some time, if I may say so that create an environment which doesn't really go out of hand, buy some time and build resources. What was one of the main important resource that was required in COVID time? The centerpiece of it, as the WHO said at that time, was diagnostic testing. Because unless you test, you do not know what's going around, right? You cannot prevent the further infection and so on. It was the centerpiece to that. Where did we stand at the time? We did not have a single diagnostics in India. We were actually requesting formally through the government to Abbots of the world, Thermos of the world, please send one plane of 5 lakh kits for the month of April. This is a formal request. And our needs on the ground was around 10 lakhs per day. Right? If you remember, you have to actually had to have general physicians request to do testing because there was no supply of it. So now, a country of 1.4 billion people or whatever, we didn't have that. Now, this is at that time where, under the guidance of Professor K.V. Raghun, who was the PSA at that time, largely we built a capacity program where we said that while we are going to borrow and, of course, take the resources, can we do something from our own backyards? Are there any diagnostic players who can eventually rise up and actually deliver what we need? Now, that is where it started. So we understood what are the problems. So there were players who are apparently diagnostic players, but they were never in the top rank of developing something of high quality, high sensitivity diagnostic kits. They were always doing something which was a lower, specificity, lower quantity, just so that they were playing on that. Because doing that requires significant investment in terms of personnel, expertise, infrastructure. And idea was that they will play the second fiddle and let the global north, dictate or rather they dominate the development sector. But because now our backs are the challenge, we actually identified a way where can we create a consortium? I'm trying to be fast. Can we create a consortium where we can work? So what we did, and let me not go to philosophy of it. What we did is we worked with 250 organizations, companies, who had different capabilities of out of RT-PCR cocktail, one, two, three, four, different people had different capabilities. Idea was to take them in each and every region and work now with academics who had infrastructure, who had expertise to develop it to the highest level of quality and scalability. So we work with 250 organizations. They all were working on some was A, some was B, some was C, some was of everything together. Brought them in, sent them to the center of excellences in academia, like I said, Pune, Hyderabad, couple of places, in Bangalore, couple of places, and so on. And this consortium and collaboration within a year resulted in few things, and this is the outcome. I fast forwarded 1 year ago. What happened is that within a year, we started with before the year, we started with a laughable mission called, 1 million test productivity per day. The mission million, we called it. It was very laughable. We were zero and we are saying 1 million tests per day we manufacture from India. 1 year, we achieved it, we went beyond it, we got to a 1.3 million tests per day from India. Not only that, we actually had 41 RT-PCR kits from that effort approved by ICMR CDSCO. This not only increased the accessibility so everyone could get tested, more than that, it also brought down the prices, which was 4,500 rupees on day one when we started the RT-PCR test. It is now 225 rupees today, which is world's most cost-effective RT-PCR test. This, in nutshell, is a power of collaboration. But different expertise in startup, industry, government, international foundation, which funded Rockefeller Foundation funded this program. All the academia like ISA Pune, CCMB, NCPS, ISC, INSTEM, CCAM, all those came together, and then this was the outcome of it. And I don't think, for me, I find a better, strong example of convergence, which can give you seemingly impossible thing, which can become possible when the power of collaboration happens. I think that is something we should celebrate. But do not let it go away when the crisis go away. How do we continue to build on it? So good thing is that we have now continued this platform beyond COVID. Now Rockefeller Foundation, Gates Foundation, and FIND is funding it, and we have taken 5 more pathogens, 5 more infectious diseases, which we are going to build the same way, and hope that their access and their affordability also can come down. That would be my larger picture.
That's where I think, to connect with what Manoj said and what you're saying, there's a need for agility, there's a need for understanding scale, and very India-centered behavioral patterns to be grounded, and then sustainability of it, so that it actually reaches everybody. And I think that's what I'm understanding. Kavita, for you, being part of the government, like what Manoj said, government has to be a catalyst. They cannot be an enforcer of, here's how I want to do it, and this is what I want to do it, but more a catalyst for this change. Can you talk about some of the initiatives as well as opportunities and challenges you guys face in the whole collaboration process?
Sure, definitely. So I would actually take from where Dr. Taslim left the story. It is the story comes from the COVID tenure. Basically, the first testing kit that we are aware of, my lab, it actually came to us first, like the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, which requires some kind of support. So we connected it to NCL Pune, and it was actually backed up by industries. And that's where we realized the power of industry and academia collaboration, and that is how we were having our first testing kit for COVID. And similarly, we did it for reagents, ventilators, and the result was so wonderful that we started actually exporting to outside countries, especially the African countries. So this is the kind of potential that we have realized, that once the industry or academia collaboration goes on, will get good results, and we can actually make India a global innovation hub. So what Office of Principal Scientific Advisor does is, since being the highest advising body to Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers, it has various verticals under it, which works around various missions and innovation things to promote R&D and facilitate industry-academia collaboration. So the first vertical which comes here is the Prime Minister's Science and Technology Advisory Council, which works for all the missions that we all are hearing about, maybe quantum mission, hydrogen mission, etc. The second is the Empower Technology Group, which works with the line ministries to implement those missions. And third is the Strategic Alliance and Division that I am representing here today and is led by Dr. Sapna. So here the main role is to facilitate collaboration between industry and academia, and we have developed a platform that's currently run by Office of PSA, and it's a free platform which is basically a single point of contact for the engagement with pan-India research ecosystem. Currently we have all premium institutes, including Tier 2 and Tier 3 institutes registered on that. We have both the stakeholders, both side stakeholders on that, maybe demand side stakeholder or supply side stakeholder. So demand side are people from industries, philanthropists, international government who has funds in some kinds of problem. And to provide the solution, we have the supply side, which are the academic institutes, research institutes, startups, and innovators. And it's a completely free platform. Anybody can use it. So whosoever wants to use it can actually use it. So this is the kind of initiatives that currently government is doing. Apart from that, there are several other initiatives going on. For example, establishment of research parks are there. Various schemes are there which promotes research and innovation, who are actually funding researchers and grassroots innovators. There are various kinds of fellowships and grants that are supporting STEM courses, especially to women. Things like that are going on currently on the government side. Talking about the challenges, so what we face is because we have currently the situation from both the sides, from the academia perspective also and from the industry perspective also. So what challenges we hear is, the first one comes about the infrastructure constraints that's there. So that's the one major challenge that we are currently facing on, because there is a huge supply from industry, but actually because of the infrastructure constraints, academia is unable to fulfill it, because there's a lot of load coming on only IITs. We are missing these things into Tier 2 and Tier 3 organizations and institutes. So that's one. Secondly, there are challenges on the IPR and regulatory parts that needs to be actually fixed out, both from academia and industry perspective. So these are overall the broad challenges that one faces.
I think what you are also talking about is, again, going back to what both Manoj and Taslim talked about, inclusion of a larger sector is when the impact is really felt, and that's when sustainability also happens. Anuradda, you've been in the academia, you moved to the business, now you're back again. What's your perspective of what's really the challenge when it comes to a business really stepping forward to bring in this collaboration?
I think I'll give you, I have to give a story, otherwise I cannot.
We have a lot of storytellers, and there's a time constraint that I'm working on.
I think I worked at the time, the cusp time that he was talking about, which we were talking about 2010. And that's a time when I was, industries had just started coming to the academia. So we had, one of these sponsors who was a distinguished alumni award, he got Ravi Venkatesh. He said, I want to give a lab. And we pitched for it, and that's when the Cummins Indian Research Facility was established. So the mandate was to develop an engine. Now this mandate came from the industry. Said you develop an engine for alternate fuel, conforming to the then existing emissions. But the main mandate was capability building. Okay, you have to have so many active projects, you have to, all that was okay. So we did that, and it was regular reviews and all, it was a lot of excitement. Now that was done, then what? So that's the next question of now what do you do? Because how does the industry react? We don't know. And I didn't know and I had no one to guide me. So I thought, okay, the project is over, it's going to be over. So I just happened to ask, I said, now what are you going to do with this? So they said, you tell you want to commercialize it? I said, why not? They said, okay, but you'll have to do a lot of other things. Let's do a pilot project. So it was very interesting at that point that the industry came forward, understanding that I do not know, because there was no precedence, at least in IIT at that time, that, and especially going to a village, see, this was something for a rural application. So they didn't even expect me to say yes. And then we went ahead, to cut the long story short, we went ahead to we identified a village, we put up this. And only when you go there and you start doing it, did we realize we need to collect the oil seeds and we need a decoder. And then we need something to filter the oil. So they were in the process of developing one technology, I ended up developing 3 or 4 technologies. Probably if I had done it now, in the process of IP and IP sharing, I would have lost, I wouldn't have done anything. At that time, it was just coming up, so I wasn't really bothered. Plus the fact that it was for rural application, I wanted it to be in the open domain. Fortunately for me, it worked and they not only commercialized it, but they asked me to join. Now, that was the time when, for me, industry was new. My father was a professor, my grandfather was a professor, the whole lot were professors, so I had never seen. So for me, it was like, okay, maybe before I die, I will see what is something in the industry, and that's how I joined. And I thought 2-3 years, I'll just join, do something and come back. But 2-3 years went by to only understand how an industry works. And I think that's a very important thing. Every faculty to know how an industry thinks, it's very important for you to go there. It took me 3 to 4 years only to understand that you need to learn to stop research if it is not going to be easy to commercialize it. As a faculty, you are not ready to accept it. You want to go on doing it. You can never accept that your research is going to be of no use, right? You must know when to stop and start the next part. That is, I think, one of the biggest lessons that I learned from there. And secondly, I think if we can accept that this is my research, which can be applied, but I need support for the peripheral. That is another thing which faculty find it difficult to address, because we are made like that. We are the experts. Let's accept it. I mean, it's very hard. I'm sure you will accept. It's very hard for us to accept that, oh, we don't know this. We are the experts, right? So to come out of that and accept that collaboration is required for ensuring that the project is successful and commercializable, I think we also need to step ahead, and as the industry also needs to understand that she can't do everything herself. We need to support. I think that was my learning experience through this, and today I feel, there is a lot of synergy. Both understand, but there is no funding for that middle part of TR4 to TR6. If that was it, even with all the understanding, if that's not there, it's not going to happen. So now that we have started understanding, and if there is some funding in between, I think things will move. I think we are in a very, very good position now, is what I'm saying.
Love it, love it. It takes me back to my early years in HP as a product manager. I used to work with printers, and none of us had printers at home. I'm here to think like a customer. I have no idea how to think like a customer without using that product, and it was like a nightmare. And then to put a proposal to Meg Whitman at that time, she wanted cost of goods, she wanted scalability, she wanted which tier it fits in, which industries, use cases, and here we are, a bunch of people who have no sense of what a home printer looks like. That's what you're also talking about. Create that awareness, understand the ecospace that you're in, the users, the holistic thing, and keep in mind the cost as well as the revenue model. That's when the rubber hits the road. I want to, how much time I have, sweetie?
You can speak for 10 minutes.
Okay, beautiful. This is a common question because so far we've talked about the academia, the industry, and the government. As an individual, irrespective of where I'm coming from, if I have to think collaboration, it's not an authoritative space. It's a very influential space. What are some things I need to sort of hone internally and look inwards and probably have a mindset makeover for me to be ready for that kind of a collaboration when it happens. I think when you have a mindset, then opportunities automatically come together. So I want to start with you, Manoj, to see if you can give some tips of the trade.
Yeah, first, I will come to an important point that always runs in mind. Collaboration happens between two parties when both of them have a select and focus strategy and both of them have directed goals. If one party has a directed goals and other has an undirected approach in whatever, things will not happen because you cannot have a tangible outcome. Unless tangible outcome is defined, I as an individual will worry to collaborate with anybody else because it is all about resources that we are spending. I just want to give one very small, very small, it's not a story, it's a reality. Perhaps the single biggest forced collaboration by the government of India, post-independence, that is also the genesis of our university, by the way. In October 2021, Prime Minister Gati Shakti National Master Plan was launched. That is of the tune of 100 lakh crore, that is $1.2 trillion. When we consider our GDP around 4 trillion, even now, right, just 30% of GDP, that means single biggest plan ever. Why it was done? Because we know in infrastructure, government is spending significantly. Even this year's budget is 10 lakh crore. What is happening? You look in the past, you construct a road, you don't know next day whether fiber will be laid and for what reasons will be cut. You start a rail line, after some years, it will not be completed, possibly because the rail was supposed to pass through a forest land and environmental clearance was not obtained. The Shakti plan, in spirit, is to force integrated planning and coordinated approach between 16 different ministries and 42 departments of the government of India. Today, any project more than 500 crore cannot be approved if it is not consented to by all the 16 ministries. How does that help? That help because once a plan, you can think that okay, plan approval may take maybe 1 month more, 2 months more, 3 months more. Once a plan is approved, you are reasonably certain that there will not be cost overruns, there will not be schedule overruns. This is one of the approach of the integrated planning. Coming to the university, I want to come back to universities, particularly to the comment made by PSA. Today, one challenge I see is that every institute, every university want to do everything. In India, if we were to succeed, we have to have cluster-based approach. That means only few best people should work on quantum mission, only few best universities or institutes should work on hydrogen mission, or so on. If everybody tries to do everything, and we are limited by resources and paucity, that is what I call undirected approach. If we have to really make outcome, then we have to have a directed approach and a focus. That is, when we are spending 500 crore or 10,000 crore, we should get an outcome. So, in terms of spirit, whether individual level, organization level, country level, I believe that this focus versus allowing everybody to do on their free will. Academics are used to do free will, that they want to do whatever they like to do. That's fine. But there is a difference between fundamental research and undirected research. Fundamental research also, we have to really, as a country, we have to progress to have fundamental contributions. I would stop here.
No, I like that. I think one of the advices I had received very early on is be very aware of where you're going to depth and where you're a generalist. And it's very important to understand when that shift has to happen. And that's a balance. And that's when true innovation really comes together. And it's brought together by the value and the larger goal that you're actually going after. Anuradda?
Okay, I'll just continue from there. So when I went to Cummins, what was the next thing which came into my mind was to establish an industry academia interaction within Cummins and ensure that there are more such projects. And to my dismay, everything was rejected. Okay, and that's when I said, thinking, what is it? I mean, I went on telling them, you brought me here and I'm doing so much for you, you are acknowledging it. Then I realized it was fit for market. Therefore, it was very good. The moment it is advanced research, we have to convince them that Indian academia can do it. So it's a very there are very few Crisco pollen sort of people who will fund those sort of researchers. We don't have too many. Everywhere we have to prove ourselves, and academia has to prove. And that's a time when we had to do a detailed analysis. And what we realized is what he's saying, and I'll just pick up from there. So the industry, why would industry go to an academia for collaboration? Okay, what does industry gain out of it? One, to leverage expertise, and that happens through solving short-term solutions or consultancy, or they would have sponsored MTech, sponsored PhDs or courses or something like that. Okay, so leveraging the expertise and capability development. And the third thing is visibility and advocacy, right? So they will give chair professor, they will give tech fest, sponsorship, conference sponsorship, but that's all that they're looking for. If you look at the academia, what are they looking for? Sponsorship for the conferences. They're looking at facilities, establishing some labs or something, and income generation through the small consultancies. But if the gap is, I want something delivered, I want to deliver something that is not coming in between. And to do that, baby steps have to be taken, and that's what we took. And today, in the last 1 year, we have brought it to a stage that we went through everything. We gave chair professor, I also got them to join an energy pre-competitive consortium, and sponsored everything we started. We also started working on, the collaborative research. So I think if you ask me individually how I could impact, it was deep analysis of what's happening, but the time is very important. The same thing I couldn't have done earlier. Now the government is very supportive. There is a lot of push on the industry academia interactions. There is professor by practice, which is really very helpful for the academia to understand from their own colleague on what the industry needs, and for the industry person to bring it to the industry colleagues to say, okay, how does an academia behave, or what is their psychology, what is their requirement? If someone goes and transfers a technology, is it going to be there in that Excel sheet for the promotion? Is it a tick or not a tick? It's very important. At my time, village electrification was not a tick. I was asked on 1 year you spent on developing and went. Did you publish a paper? No, there was nothing to publish a paper. It was actually an electrification. For me, that was my biggest success, but for IIT, it was not. It took time for me to convince. I got the promotion, but it was tough. Okay, so I think my contribution was to understand, and I would expect, I'm happy to share my experiences, but to have impact on this collaboration, it's very important to understand every aspect of the motive and the incentive. If we can approach that, I think we can do it. This is the right time to do it. Everything, the entire ecosystem, or I would say everything is, that's what is happening. The wind is blowing the right direction.
If I can actually stitch the two pieces, one was actually having clarity on that goal and the big picture. The second is really going to understand what segment are we going after, what fitment are we talking about, what's the value proposition one needs to cater to over here. That's the second part that you're talking about. Taslim, what else as an individual should I be looking at when I'm thinking of enabling collaboration wherever I am, whether it's in an industry, academia, or in the government?
Thanks, sir. I have a very, 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 very brief answer. But before that, I just wanted to add that the translation component that you talked about from TRL 3 to 6, actually I must acknowledge that Chris has actually funded that at CPM, which attempts to take academic discoveries and make it into industrial ready technologies. We call it Discovery to Innovation Accelerator.
I said that we need more Chris.
So it has been funded in collaboration, or rather largely funded by the Office of PSA. So PSA office has co-funded philanthropically by Chris, who is Pratiksha Trust. So it's an acknowledgement that such centers are definitely much needed. We have built it, and it has been running for a few years and has been phenomenally productive because of people like Atif, who is my colleague here, who is an IT Kanpur PhD, and contributing significantly to efforts of DIA and many other things. Coming back, what is needed? I'll have two words answer. Ability to trust people. I don't think there is a bigger point than in collaboration where you can trust people. You might fail, but I think if you lose the ability to trust, I think you can't collaborate. You are always, suspicious of and more careful. And I think larger pictures requires larger leap of faith, and that is ability to trust. I think that's very, very important. That was my answer.
I want to go a little more into that because I think it's a very important part because collaboration, like I said, from what I have experienced, it's not an authoritative thing. So I cannot come and say, hey, today I want this. It'll never happen. It's a very influencing thing, which always starts with trust. How does one go about? Like, if I'm coming, I don't know you, you don't know me, I don't know what's in it for you, I know what's in it for me. How do I build that trust? What's that basic thing I need to be looking at inwards to say, hey, this is what I'm going to put my first foot forward with?
I think that actually it's readiness of as an individual that you talked about is about as you become much more confident about your work, your ability to trust comes. When you are not confident about your work, you are unable to also trust the larger ecosystem, and that's where the challenge comes. So I think empowering that capability is a very important component.
And I think that goes back to the foundations that they both spoke about. And I also think what you're also saying is you would then pick and choose the partnerships because you already done your groundwork, and so you exactly know who are the right folks that I could be collaborating with. And that's where the trust starts building.
Thank you.
Kavita?
Well, I think most of the answers are already covered, but still just to add on two important points. One is basically adaptability to the changing norms is one important thing that I think as an industry or academia or a government should actually focus on. Second is about we can have learnings and analysis from a few of the successful models from other countries that are working very well and that can actually work in our nation also. And third is moreover of an individual thing, because as an individual, if we understand our work and we understand that whatever we are doing is going to impact the society and going to help the society and resolve the societal challenges, then I think this is something that motivates you internally and can bring a huge success.
I think I'm going to tell a story here, a quick one. When I was in HP, in printers, we have this ink density, right? The drop of ink. There's a lot of science that goes behind that. And one of my research friends who was in HP Labs moved to Xerox, and Xerox shut down that business. And she was very passionately interested in that density drop and the heat map view that you get from that. And she went and bought the patent from Xerox while they were shutting down. Today, she runs a company called Niramai, which actually does breast cancer predictive analytics using, Gita. And it's beautiful how when you've got that clarity of the larger picture, the value proposition, the fitment, the collaboration, the agility and the flexibility, how things can really come together. And I think it's very important to understand that the world is moving very fast, technology is moving very fast, and therein lies our own change that is required as well to become more collaborative. But thank you so much. Any questions? I know we are between you and the lunch.